welcome everyone to another developer interview here on the Game Wisdom channel and for my Perceptive Podcast series. My guest tonight is working on the kind of Punch-Out inspired game Big Boy Boxing. It's one we had a chance to play a few times and definitely one that I'm looking forward to seeing more of. So please welcome from Soupmasters, Martin. How are you doing?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm doing great. It's thank you so much for taking your time to have this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're dealing with, of course, time zone related shenanigans, which seems to always be the case these days. So I'm glad we were able to finally sit down and get everything aligned.
Yes, time zones is the bane of this remote kind of working situation also, which we use a lot of remote working with different time zones, and there's summer times and winter times, and it's hard to keep track of.
Mm-hmm. And for people watching us record right now, if you are an indie developer or just someone in game dev and would like to come on and talk about your work, please reach out. I am always looking for guests. You'll find links, emails, and all that every which way around here. But let's get started with our chat. So since this is your first time on, Martin, can you talk a little bit about who you are? What is your kind of game dev background?
Yeah, so I'm the game director and programmer on Big Boy Boxing, and this is the studio's first project. It's founded by me and my friend Ludwig, and this is this is the first project we work on together. It's actually kind of the second project, but it's really like we basically converted that first project into this project. So. Everything is new for us, and we're kind of learning as we go. And Ludwig is the one that's doing the animations in the game.
Nice. And which one of you is made the pixel art for it?
That's Ludwig. It's a big part of the animation process, and I'd say that's one of the things that we put a lot of focus on is the animations, the visuals, and the presentation. And that's it's kind of the essence of all our delays and problems is just getting this workflow with animating everything to work. Kind of.
Yep. And for people watching this, of course, there'll be links to the store page down below, so definitely give it a check and wish list and all that good stuff. So, for everyone listening to us right now, what is kind of like the elevator pitch for Big Boy Boxing?
Well, Big Boy Boxing is kind of it's a spiritual successor to like the Punch-Out games, but we've also taken a lot of inspirations from the old American cartoons, such as Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, the old Disney movies, and we kind of took in a lot of the old lessons that they kind of and the old styles there, and we kind of tried to find a way for us to, I'd say, merge these two elements into one. So it's been a long process, and it actually all started not even as a Punch-Out game. It actually started as a Super Smash Bros. Platform fighter. But then we kind of evolved the game. We taking back even one kind of one notch back. It all started with the characters. Okay, this is really not an elevator pitch now. Here I'm giving the entire lore now, but it all started with the characters for us actually. We started to create these characters that we wanted to I'd say put inside a game. We want to portray them in some way. We have these characters that we created that we love, and we thought to ourselves, let's put them in a Super Smash Bros. Type game because we're that's where you get you have all these different personalities in Super Smash Bros. So that would be the perfect platform for us to showcase characters. But we quickly realized that making like any type of fighting game, we like it very quickly strayed from the presentation and like the story and the characters, that was too much about metadata and fairness, competitiveness, and like making it actually fun for two players to play. And so we were like, I convinced my partner or my friend Ludwig that we scrapped this idea that we worked like 2 years into, and it was like, I'd say like quite like we could basically have released the game, but we were like, I convinced him that let's take this game, scrap it, and let's make it into like kind of a Punch Out like game. Like he's never heard of Punch Out before, but I convinced him that that was a good idea, because I'm like, that would be perfect because we got all these personalities we want to show off, and Punch Out has this like big focus on like one singular boss at a time. So I'm like, that would be the perfect kind of platform for a game. And I told him it's going to take 2 months for us to convert the game into a Punch Out game and release it. And that was like more than 2 years ago.
Yeah, that was actually a good point. That was going to take me to my next question, because I remember like chatting with you or seeing this game like a while ago. Like, how long has it like overall been like working on Big Boy?
Like I'd say, when I think about it, it's longer than 2 years ago. I convinced him to that cutoff date there, but like that we worked on, because that's kind of the thing with this being our first project. There's just so much other aspects to keep in mind. Also, there's like the marketing part, the financial part, the relation part. Like all of that. So I'd say if we try to put that aside, and because I think what is most interesting is like how much time have we put into Big Boy Boxing, like developing it, and that'll be about 2 years that we've had the time to like focus on the game and really work on it.
So I guess with like taking Big Boy and going from being more of a Smash like to like Punch Out, that kind of like boss rush focus. What was kind of like, I guess like what inspired you to kind of go with like Punch Out? Like what kind of like attracted you design wise to make that switch?
First off, it was a game which I have been very fun. Like even though the original game was never like released during my childhood, so to say, I so the kind of lore there is like I had a very like crappy PC when I was at a certain age. So I used to like just the only games I could handle was like emulators that emulated like NES games, SNES games. It didn't really handle like Nintendo 64 games, so I had to stick to the kind of pixel art games, which is maybe the reason I'm so fond of pixel art today. But I played a lot of Punch Out, and I must say like I'd never beat Mike Tyson because he was like super hard, but that definitely put that in my mind. But the big thing I think was actually the Punch Out Wii game, because of the singular focus they had on character. Like I don't think I've maybe like Cuphead, which is also another inspiration for the game, had also quite a big focus on a singular character. But that was what really attracted me to take in inspiration, was the singular perspective. Like here's one big boss, here's all their personality, and let's tell a story about them through gameplay. And even the player is like has like is half like ghosted out. Like you don't even see him. Like you just see the boss kind of. And I thought that was such an interesting perspective.
For me, I beat Super Punch Out, but I never beat the NES or the Wii ones. But I have certainly beaten Cuphead time and time again.
Yeah, yeah. I say I actually like found like I remember I beat like before the game was officially released. Like I actually I I didn't have access to a lot of cash back then, so I cracked Cuphead, like, and I could crack it like pirate it, and I beat like the game like an hour before it was released on Steam. So that was kind of funny.
So, with Big Boy, in terms of like the Punch Out design, one of the things I was saying about with like a boss rush is like trying to create like I guess like the different components of making it work, because it is like, despite like with like the likes of Cuphead, Titan Souls, and even like going further back with something like Shadow of the Colossus, it's still like, I would say, like more of the like nichier side in terms of gameplay. So with like coming up with the gameplay for Big Boy, how are you approaching like the philosophy of building like a boss rush centric game?
So for us, what we try to put a big focus on our game specifically is the evolution of the characters, and actually trying to realize these characters even more. So the kind of answer to everything is probably going to be, it's because we like our characters so much and we want to develop them, and that's kind of what we want to do with the boss rush formula, because basically a boss rush is a singular entity of, like, it mustn't be like strictly one, but that's generally, it's going to be like one entity, and you build this, it's just, yeah, like entity slash, let's call them character. That sounds that crude, but like these characters, like we want to have the player fight against them in this fight, and then they have to learn their patterns, and they get comfortable with these patterns when they beat that boss. But then we pit them against a rematch of that boss, and this is something the Punch Out games did. But I think we especially on that front, I think we will evolve on what they kind of started, because I think mostly what they just do is like, I feel like they make their behavior more aggressive. Like, quite, it's, they don't really introduce a twist. They don't introduce a evolution to that kind of mechanic. So that's what we're going to do with every single boss, is having multiple rematches, and having not just having them being more aggressive. At the same time, we're not going to make the bosses unrecognizable, so that it basically is just a new fight, which is, it should be a twist on the previous one. Hopefully, I kind of answered your question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that actually, I think, is a good point to bring up. One of the things I was saying about in terms of the gameplay of kind of like the Punch Out series, or this kind in general. One of the things that has, I think, been like a weakness, or at least like to me with some of like the more basic examples, has been that they sometimes tend to become very, I guess, repetitive in terms of their gameplay. They become such a focus on the pattern of the boss that it doesn't really lead to like any. It doesn't really lead to, I guess, the game feeling like a fight. It feels like you're just more or less following a basic rhythm game. And what I mean by that is, like, when the like enemy behavior is so tuned that you can only attack them during, let's say, X animation, or after they do Y attack, that it doesn't feel like you're actually like playing the game. It just feels like you're just following a very basic pattern, and any deviation from that is oftentimes met with like failure, or you're just outright punished by the game. In terms of like, I guess, like building like the actual like fighting mechanics of Big Boy, or what the player can do in it, what has been like your approach in that regard?
What we're like kind of working on is trying to make the players feel much more, quicker, and have more movement than in the previous, like Punch Out games, which it can feel quite stiff there, where
Mm-hmm.
it's as you say, it can feel like it's a rhythm game with a very like strict beat, you can maybe say. But what we're trying to do is trying to make that a bit more dynamic, and even though we are going to punish the player quite hard for doing a serious mistake, but we're still going to have there's going to be a lot of different ways which the player can beat the boss. Like the player can beat, like a lot of the bosses will be like can be beaten without ever moving, or without, like, with using very limited punching, or even some bosses no punching at all. And maybe some bosses, basically, I think a better way of saying it is we're going to have um, behaviors that make sense in the lore of the character.
Mhm.
That if you understand the character well, you can abuse that, so to say. And if you don't do that, there is multiple different ways of beating that boss. So there's going to be, because of kind of the limited nature of the movement in this type of game, we have to give the player as much expression with kind of the limited tools that they have. So, because I mean, basically the player's got two moves, right? Like two basic moves. There's punching and there's dodging. um, we're actually going to add more moves, so there's going to be parrying as well, which I think is going to be like add a lot of dynamic into the game. There's also going to be something called like we can call it a adrenaline bar, is what we call it now. So a kind of combo meter of sort, and as well as there's going to be a upgrade system, so like a perk system similar to Cuphead. So there's a level strategy that can help you.
And I like what you're saying about having the different styles or different upgrades and ways for the player to do more in the game. That was always kind of like one of the limiting factors, I think, for like the Wii Punch Out, or just for some of these boss rush games in general, where there is only one way for you to play. And you either do that way and you beat the boss, or you don't do that way and it becomes next to impossible. And with kind of like the upgrade system, like do the upgrades provide any kind of like passive benefits, or is it just simply like unlocking like new moves or new tech?
So we want to have like a lot of different kind of upgrades. So that's something which, I guess that's something that it's something we're having in the cooking pots, so to say, for a very long time, but we haven't decided 100% yet, like how we want to for it all to end. But we do want to have like a lot of different systems of upgrade, like permanent unlocks, maybe permanent upgrades, also like switchable stuff, and like so you can have new abilities, passive abilities, and like maybe sometimes it can be quite like creative. Just to give you like an example, it's one we're making is called Dynamite Punch, and it's like every 10th punch explodes and does double damage. So you kind of got to time your 10th punch on like their critical spot for that to have a massive difference. And if you don't, it's just going to be like a 5% DPS boost. But if you time it correctly, it could be a significant upgrade.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I wanted to ask you about in terms of the gameplay is kind of like the readability of combat. This is another point, and again, like going back to what we were saying with Cuphead earlier, is certainly like a major aspect of these games. Like, how easy is it to like read what the enemy is doing? There are some of these games where it's kind of like the character puts up his right hand like this, and it's really like a left-handed down blow, or they put up their left hand and it's like a right sweep. And obviously, that also goes hand in hand with the art style and the animation you're working with. What has it been like trying to figure out, like, I guess, like, how you wanted to make the game readable to the player?
Yeah, so this is something that's really important for me, because that's something I usually have problems with. Even in games that I enjoy, I just have a hard time like understanding. It feels like, I mean, our philosophy is this. Like, this is our philosophy, and we won't stop developing until we've achieved this. But it's like we're fine with the player, obviously being punished the first time they fight a boss. Losing is going to be a part of this process. Like it's a part of the core gameplay to lose. But we want to at least make sure that when the player has failed once, they know why they failed and something they can try to avoid it. we never want to leave the player with like, oh, they failed, they don't know why they failed, because they're never going to figure it out like the second, the third, like it has to be the first time. They have to figure out the first time like what they did wrong. Then we're okay with it, like with the players being punished for something. And I guess like the current builds of the game, I think that's something. I think one of the biggest concerns I have, so that we're working on, like with the feedback from the current build, is it's a bit unclear, like what you're supposed to do. Um, and yeah, we're gonna fix that, and we're gonna make sure that that problem gets like it won't be a problem in the next build, because yeah, it's something I think is really important.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of a taste on how we're solving it. Like there's one part of it is like the animation style. We sometimes we just have it's easier to convey, and often what we do is like if something is easier to convey, like a presentation wise thing, like a animation is easier to portray in one way or another, we usually take the one that looks best
Mm-hmm.
and try to make a game out of that, if that makes sense. And in a situation where we need a strictly like a hitbox in this location or hitbox that, we try our best to communicate that through the animations, and that should be enough. But we're also going to add another HUD, like HUD element to it, which will make sure that uh, that's communicated clearly to the players.
Mm-hmm. And on the point of the difficulty and getting the player to understand that has been another challenge of a lot of boss rush centric games. So one that I played last year, I think it was Eldest Souls. That one kind of went for very over the top, very difficult design. Was a game where they really kind of threw everything at the player and asked them to figure it out, right at that moment. And difficulty has always been a major aspect of these kinds of boss rush games. Again, we mentioned, of course, trying to fight Mike Tyson in the original Punch Out. With kind of building Big Boy, what I guess the first part of this question is what kind of audience are you aiming for? Is it going to be casual, core, hardcore, or trying to hit as many people as you can?
Yeah, it's kind of we have these characters that has a big appeal, kind of wide, like the wider in the audience appeal, so to say. And we have the gameplay, which is a bit more designed for players that is okay with retrying the same boss a few times. So we're trying to find that balance with having enough of a difficulty for it to be like it's supposed to be able to be as hard as Punch Out at times, but also it should be more accessible than Punch Out. And I think in a few ways we're going to do that, and one of them is the controls is I think one thing which Ludwig, he being like my kind of co-founder and the absolute most important person with me on this project. He never played Punch Out before, but when I see him play Punch Out, because he he just can't get a hold of kind of the controls of that game, because it's very limiting. The dodges are set in an amount of time. You can't really influence the dodges when you've started them, and the punching is a bit slow, and also just losing all your thunder when you get hit. It's all your stars. Sorry, when you get hit, it's just too much of a punishment to get hit. So we kind of changed those aspects. Like we wanted to make the dodging more fluid. You can hold your dodge. You can release them prematurely. I was really afraid that would make the punch kill the punch up concept for us, because I'm like, can't everyone just dodge, like, it's like there's no everyone can dodge whenever, but it's I'm proven that it's still very difficult with that. But also, we removed so you don't lose, your star slash thunder when you get hit, because it just felt like a double negative, and like you get punished twice. Like you're already punished for losing health, and you're also punished for losing your stars. That's too much. And we tried to move some difficulty from like them defeating the boss to the boss's challenges, and also like defeating the bosses in their rematches. And the rematches are a core part of the experience. But why kind of feel like in the Punch Out games, especially the first one, it's like I feel like I've already beaten like these bosses, and these are just like you know they just cranked up the difficulty kind of through changing the behavior scripts. And we're going to like try to hook the players into these characters and seeing how they evolve, because they will have twists and turns, very comedic twists and turns, but hopefully players will want to see how they're how it will end for them, or how it continues for them. And some of them are really funny characters. Some of them are characters you want to see succeed, and some of the characters you want to see fail, or that you love to hate.
And like the point you said about difficulty or like punishing the player is a really good one, because that's always like the challenge of like these kinds of games in terms of how far do you want to make the difficulty go. Like, there are people who will say, give the player all the punishment. You get hit, you lose health, you lose all your resources. Very much like that old school, like, shmup style of design, where it's only hard if you're not good at the game. But the problem that I've had with that, and what I've seen from some, like, the more, like, recent examples, is that it oftentimes just, like, really limits what you can do with the game by just saying, well, the best way to play is just be 100% perfect all the time.
Yeah, I think the big problem with the, like, let's call it the shmup design is, I think it doesn't make sense at all if the player takes too much, like if the player loses too much time if they fail, and also if they don't learn anything new after they failed. In some hard games that I really much enjoy, like the Soulsborne games, sometimes I feel like, oh, I just lost to this thing, and I have no idea how what I should do differently. That feels kind of disencouraging, and maybe I run back to get my souls in that game, and I get killed again. And I'm like, I have no idea why that happens and how I should avoid it. But what we're trying to do is kind of make sure that whenever the player fails, they first of all, it's not going to be that much of a time punishment. And that's the first thing is the quick restarts, and the other thing is they should need to understand, or have a very clear indication of like what they did wrong, and that they can, and now that they know this, it's going to be. And the thing is, the secret to kind of beating a boss in our game is you just map out all the different possibilities of all their moves, and once you have done that, it you can really start to abuse that boss. And the power dynamic kind of shifts from this boss like just hammering you down till you just anticipating his every punch, and he has no chance against you. And that's kind of the process that the process that you go through with every fight is you get beat up really quickly. And we try to limit the player's health to 3 health. We might let the player extend this health with some upgrades and stuff, but our philosophy was like, if the player is going to fail, we want them to fail quickly, so they don't have too much time invested in like that run. And because the longer the fight goes on for, the more annoying the death is going to feel. And yeah, so we want them to fail fast.
Yep. And you want, as you said, like to give the player the information they need to be able to understand whether they're winning or whether they're losing. I guess it's a quick question regarding the upgrade system that we were mentioning earlier. Does the player like, I guess, like how are you like building that? Is it going to be a case of like you earn like experience points, or like every time you win a fight you get like a point or something else?
It's so the different types of upgrades will like work differently, but the kind of main upgrade thing will be the stride system.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens there is like every time, like all the bosses have three challenges to them, which is like after you beat the boss, you can replay that boss, and you will see what his challenges are, and they can be like they can be as simple as defeat this boss within a certain time frame, or it can be defeat this boss without moving, or like defeat this boss without parrying, or defeat him but parry 10 times or something, like. And we try to design these challenges, or actually we design all the challenges to showcase some part, like a interesting part of their behavior, which is actually going to be like a hint to make like the rematches, well, like sometimes essential to defeat the rematches, but sometimes you know
Mm-hmm.
it's like a behavior quirk that can really help you understand the depth of their behavior system. And whenever they beat these challenges, they will be able to get a currency which they can unlock more perks for. So the players are kind of very incentivized to revisit the bosses and re-defeat, like refight the ones that they've already conquered, and kind of experiments with their unique behavior quirks that the challenges kind of push them to. It basically tells you, it's not how it feels to the players. To the players, it feels like a challenge, but for as a designer, it's like we're trying to hint to them, like this is what we want you to do it, and when doing that, you will understand that this is a special quirk in their behavior. Like this is something cool that you didn't expect that that the boss can do, or an interesting way of defeating them. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And speaking about behavior, that takes me to one question I want to ask you. Like, do you have like any kind of like one of the things that I know like in the original Punch Out and some of the later examples was you have like the means of like instantly downing some of the bosses, like Bald Bull being like probably the most
Yeah.
famous example. Again, like you don't have to spoil anything for Big Boy, but have you like put anything of like that in like some like the boss behavior?
Yes, of course.
All right.
Yeah, I will kind of not spoil, but there is a boss that his entire thing is his name is One Hit Wonder, and his entire thing will be that he is a one shot. Like you will down him in one single hit.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, but he's I won't say how, but he's still going to be a challenging fight, even though he only takes one hit to destroy.
Mhm. And that actually is another question I want to ask you, pal. Because again, like another major aspect that we've said about big boy boxing is again like how the different fighters like escalate, how their moveset changes, like when things kind of go off the rails of a traditional fight. With that said, like in terms of balancing that, like as we said, like a major aspect of this game is going to be the readability of the animations, letting the player know what they can do, what's the best course of action. When like you've like have like the enemies like start going like beyond like the normal rules of boxing, and like for people watching this right now, you can certainly see some of that in the trailers and videos on the store page. How does that, I guess, like add to the challenge of the game, where suddenly it's not just a case of this character can punch, this character can block. It's like this character can like grow like 10 feet tall, or he like pulls out a weapon and starts smacking you with it.
Yeah, so um, we, we actually we actually had to refrain ourselves a lot with the creativity in the bosses, because the thing is, like, it was even wilder before, and I'm wilder in this like wilder in the sense of it just started to not even feel like a boxing match, because we went too wild with the ideas. So it was like, is this a boxing match? Is this a boxing game, or is this like a superhero fighter, or like a what's it called, wrestling game or something? I don't know. Um, but it's maybe because the when it was a Super Smash Bros. Type game, it was kind of like superheroes themed. So, but yeah, we tried to limit ourselves to make him at least hit you with a boxing glove, or something that is like boxing themed. We actually have like one boss which um, uh, grows to from a little freezy boy to an ice cold killer, and we were originally going to have him like just bring out a straight out chainsaw into the fight, because we're like, he's going to snap, he's going to go crazy, he's going to go do something bombastic. How about him like take out a chainsaw? And we're like, this isn't a boxing match anyway, and this isn't a boxing game, and maybe we should make something that feels, that's big boy boxing and not like, big boy brawling. So we try to limit ourselves with at least hitting you with something that has a boxing glove attached to it somewhere. uh, and So we thought that, with that, if we can at least do that, then we're good. And yes, they will do like crazy stuff, which is like, it's not just jabs and hooks. Like they. It feels like no boss will actually have just a simple hook or jab, because we never let that idea get animated, because we're like, that's too boring. Like we and not to say that any games that has that is boring, but we're trying to like emulate the old American cartoons, which has these, they're so animated. Like they have these comedic ways of telling the simplest action, and it's so over the top. And I think we're very attracted to that style. Another game that has taken a lot of inspiration from that is Pizza Tower, and I'm like, that was one of the games which I had followed like for like since nearly the very start of that project going public. And I was very glad to see that how positively um, that game was uh, reviewed from people, and a lot of people loved the animation and the quirky style, which I at the time nobody like when I really followed that game. That was something I felt like I was very alone in like liking that style, and I am very very glad to see that game bring that to the table, because I think we're going to bring something that's similar to that, and we've reworked a lot of the visuals many times in this game. I think we've done a overhaul of the graphics maybe 4 times, which is like, we basically have half the game done, and we're like, let's cut all these and let's start from the beginning. And I think I think now we're at a stage where a big part of the game is already finished and roughed out, so we're not going to start over again. But it's every time it becomes more cartoony. Like becomes more cartoony, it becomes less human, becomes more expression.
And you can certainly see that. Like, I'm looking at the screenshots you have on the store page, and you can definitely tell like how much things have like changed. Like going, like watching like the original trailer or the original footage to some of the more later examples of it. And it's also why, of course, like for anyone watching, like the challenge when it comes to like very expressive animation styles in games. We of course mentioned Cuphead earlier, and I mean, Cuphead, that was like what, like 6, 7 years of development, I think, in terms of getting that kind of like hand drawn rubber band style to work.
Yeah, I can say that that's a game that I think is like a miracle that it's so good, because it's like there's this the way that they kind of got both the gameplay to be, very fun, and they got the animations to be, revolutionary in a way,
Mhm.
and extreme. Like, I can't imagine the amount of time it took for them to, produce those animation. It's probably very well documented.
Mhm.
Actually, I bought their art book as a gift to Ludwig, but um, we had a lot of problems with producing this 24 FPS animation that were 25 frames per second animation, and it's like problems that nobody thinks about maybe, but it's like there is no tool that allows for what we're want to do. We had to work directly with Sprite, the creators of a very popular pixel art tool, to produce a completely new system to handle basically modular animations, which is the thing. We try to make these animations modular as well, because um, let's say we just want to change a hat, for so to say, on a character, instead of like reanimating two versions of that character with the hat and not a hat. We can make that programmable and modular, and also like importing all these animations into Unity. Unity isn't like made for these kind of pixel art games, so we
Mhm.
had we have our own like process to kind of handle that on like a technical scale, to actually import all the animations. And another thing we want to do is mod support. Maybe I stop me if you think I'm going too much off topic now, but mod support is also something that we value a lot, and the we want to make it very straightforward to create mods in the game. We don't want the mod creators to like download Unity, to be able to mod the games or something like that. They should be able to create it in a very simple way, like how I did when I was younger and made like mods for Minecraft, which is actually the way I got into game development and
Mhm.
professional game programming, was through like Minecraft modding and plugin creations.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, but like
I
as like a
definitely want to add that.
and like as a brief tangent on that, like there's definitely a greater topic about having like easy and accessible tools for people to like make mods and content for games. I mean, we're kind of seeing this like a almost like a boomer shooter renaissance with more and more people releasing GZ Doom like total conversion mods as like actual games these days. And of course, a lot of people have gotten like some inspiration and work doing like Mario Maker, and even what we saw with like Mega Man Maker. I think that's still like going the rounds right now.
Yeah, I'm actually a super big fan of the um, boomer shooter renaissance. I basically bought every boomer shooter I could find and just played all of them. I thought that was like perfect games to relax to, because I could just shut off my brain and play these games, and think about something. Yeah, so I'm very much in love with that kind of part of the indie category. But yeah, I think it's really cool to see people really putting a big value also on like mod support in different games. Like a game which I think has very interesting mod support also is Rivals of Either, if you're familiar with that. But there, you can have Ronald McDonald fighting Sans from Undertale if you want, and you could probably have Mike Tyson fighting, you know, wherever you want. And you know, you never need to download Unity or something. You just use your like scripting tools. You do this, you do that. It's basically I think a very straightforward way of doing it, and we're going to do something very similar. But I think people that use that aren't that let's say programming savvy, that maybe is more used to animation tools and that kind of workflow, they're going to have a real good time like making mods for our game, because basically I'm the only programmer at hand, everyone I work with are animators and artists, and if I say GitHub merging, they're like, "What is a merge?" So they like to work with Dropbox and stuff like that. So I have to find a way to let them, be able to work in the game without actually working in Unity, because yeah, Unity is also something which is very foreign to the Pixar animators I work with.
Mm-hmm. And like with like the whole like modding, just like throwing random characters in. Like for the people watching this right now, I would love to know in the comments like who would win a fight, Mike Tyson or Sans from Undertale. Let us know in the comments there. And I also, when you mentioned Pizza Tower, I also want to give a shout to that game as well because I loved it. It's definitely one of my favorites of this year. And it is like fantastic, like when we see like games do like very unique things, very expressive aspects with their aesthetics and their art style. Sure. So, what has been like coming up with like the music and the sound effects? So, I guess like to bring us into like the greater point about like fighting, boxing, that kind of game. Like one of the things I've actually been thinking about lately is the importance of feel when it comes to someone playing a game. Whether you're playing a match 3, a shmup, fighting game, action RPG, whatever. And one of the aspects I think a lot of indie developers who are like new tend to struggle with is making sure that the feel is right. Like when you push that punch button, you see the character do an uppercut. Like you can actually like feel like how it's conveyed through the screen. So, how has it been like coming up with like that aspect of Big Boy?
Yeah, so it's very important that whenever the player kind of presses any button, they feel like they it's almost like a voodoo doll, like they control the player. So this is something we're going to have reflect in the next version, but I still think you can see in the public versions we try to make it very like you press a button, something happens, and if you do something that is positive, it should have a very smooth feeling to it. Like you get a lot of feedback, you get some shaking, you get a sound effect, maybe the music even slightly reacts to it. All these things kind of build up into having a very nice feel to a punch and to a results. And obviously, I think with our game specifically, we have these expensive, like how to say, reaction animations to everything, and the more kind of the more let's say the more we want to reward the player, the more expressive the reactive damage animation becomes on the boss. So you're really gonna feel like you're gonna feel like in the middle of a Tom and Jerry episode with these crazy, I don't know, cuckoo the ways of Jerry or Tom hurting each other. Um, and another important thing I think for the overall feeling is the music of the game, and I think it plays a lot into the personality of each boss. So each boss will have not even they're gonna have their own theme, but they're also going to have like their own kind of era of music or style of music that is kind of theirs to own. And in each of their rematch, they're going to have a completely new theme. But we still need them to have, a callback to the previous themes and stay in like the same era of music. But we also don't want them to just be the same song, but like kind of, longer, or like we add like this one extra layer of instruments. Like they're going to be completely new compositions and going to be like they're going to like display their personality in some way. And sometimes we use them just kind of let's say sarcastically, which like you might have a very like a sarcastic music that portrays something that is in big contrast. But all the bosses will have their own theme songs, and every single match will have a new theme song. So it's like going to be many minutes of music. The shout out to Clement Punchout, which is the composer of the game. He's put extra coal in now to finish the soundtrack, the massive soundtrack, and there's so many bangers in the soundtrack that I think would be awesome to get your guys to listen on.
And I'm happy you mentioned like Tom and Jerry and like kind of like that cartoon aspect, because that was one of the things that you were kind of talking about in terms of like one of like the major inspirations, like making this more and more animated, making it more and more bombastic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's there's just so many like I don't know if it when I grew up, Tom and Jerry was like kind of explained to me as being like a bit like dumb to watch. But when I watch it now, I think it's so smart. Like this is so creative, and it's like, how did they ever come up with this? And this is so far away from dumb that you can come. So it's really a great inspiration. Looney Tune is a great inspiration. The old Disney movies are also really great. We have taken inspirations from a few different animes. But generally with the animations, we try to emulate the American style of animation rather the Japanese way of animation, which they both have like their interesting parts to it. But for us, we wanted to kind of do the more cartoony way of doing it rather than the more anime way, which is sometimes more epic. Although for some scenes that we want to make more epic, we've used more anime style animations. To be fair,
and we don't have the time, but I could certainly talk about my love of like Looney Tunes and like that style of animation and design. So I want to keep you like for a few more hours on that point, Mario.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so I think we are about at the end. Again, like I know with the time zone difference, it's getting late for you, so I don't want you to fall asleep at the keyboard. So I guess to wrap things up, just like a few like general questions about Big Boy, and then we'll end things. So the first thing I want to ask is, for people listening to us right now, do you have like a estimated like time for when the game will be out, or any like major like milestones to announce?
I think we're going to have a very eventful year next year, and I would say keep tuned on our Twitter, on the Steam page for news in the beginning of the year, and we're going to be a part of the bigger events that we've like, for example, PAX. And without spoiling too much, let's say we're going to go very hard, even harder next year. We brought a boxing ring into PAX West, and that was a huge success and was super fun. And we're going to do. We're going to do like that, but even bigger next event. So keep tuned then, and keep tuned for the rest of 2024.
And for people listening to us right now, I think you may have mentioned this earlier, but just to clarify, what platforms is Big Boy Boxing going to be on?
So we're aiming to, release the game on as many platforms as possible, and just also for a kind of a callback to the mod support, we're going to have aiming at least to have mod support available on, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, and all the consoles. But yeah, it's the major consoles and PC is what we're going to start with, and then we can see what other platforms we do next.
All right. I think with that, we should be about at the end. So, Before we kind of say goodbye for tonight, Martin, anything you want to promote in terms of social media, sites, links where people can find you, anything like that?
You guys can find us at Real Soupmasters on Twitter. That's where you can find the latest news, and then you guys can wishlist the game on Steam, so you guys get a alert when it's released.
All right. So, with that, my final question for you then is: you have anything you'd like to say to the fans? Anything about Big Boy Boxing to take us out with?
Thank you so much for the conversation, and I can invite people to join our Discord server if you want to talk more about Big Boy Boxing and talk with the fans that are speculating all the different characters. We actually had a leak on some character details which people are discussing. So if you want to join that conversation, you can do that there. And a lot of people that like Punch Out is looking forward to this game, so there you can chat with them in the Discord.
All right. And I'll make sure to include links to everything like that in the description for people watching this. So, with that said, we're going to wrap up our chat for tonight. Martin, it has been a pleasure hanging out with you this evening. My time, I'm sure it's very late where you are. And definitely, again, best of luck with wrapping up with Big Boy.
Thank you so much. Awesome.
All right. So, for everyone watching, we're going to end things here for the chat. If you're, of course, enjoying this on YouTube, do the YouTubing stuff. Check out the Discord and our Patreon for our game recommendation newsletter. As I said at the start, if you are a developer working on an upcoming or released game and would like to come on and talk about it, I'm always looking for a guest for these podcasts. So reach out any which way that you can. So with that said, everyone, come back for the discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where you some of the art and science of games. And to our next chat, have a great night.